This was a self-imposed management cease trade order. Anthony, can you explain what this means again? I know you touched on it a week and a half ago, but why this is so much different. Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking in to our latest Trade to Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales. We want to provide you guys today with an update on the latest from Canopy Growth. Obviously, some interesting news that came down, I think about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks ago, regarding management and a cease trade order and what the developments are, and an update on that and what it all means. So let's find that out as we bring in the gentleman. Anthony Verrill, Benjamin Smith, lead financial writer. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you guys.
And Anthony Verrill, millennial entrepreneur. Good to see you.
How's it going?
Good. Let's dive into this. I know we had some a lot of feedback from a lot of people on YouTube that were asking about just this whole announcement that was made. So let's quickly recap. Jump into Canopy, as I said. Weekly update on the status of the management cease trade order granted back on June 2nd by its principal regulator, the Ontario Securities Commission, under National Policy 12-203. This was a self-imposed management cease trade order. Anthony, can you explain what this means again? I know you touched on it a week and a half ago, but why this is so much different? As you said before, this is management.
Yeah, I mean, so in short, it's basically saying, guys, at the director level, at the executive level, stop selling stock. Anybody that's high up in Canopy Growth, like, give it a rest. That being said, with the share price the way it's going, I mean, I have to say that I agree with whoever's idea it was to put the cease trade order in place. Canopy's trading at what right now? I think around 72 cents US. That's kind of it's gross. From a share price perspective. I mean, if any management is selling here, like, I'd be like, why the fuck are you even involved in the company anymore? Like, stop. It's a complete lack of confidence. It's a terrible message to be relaying to the market. And I mean, I'm glad to see that they did this, but I mean, to be honest, once was a multi-billion-dollar company, and what we do see is one of the bellwethers in the cannabis industry. I mean, this behavior shouldn't be going on in the first place. It's pretty juvenile that they had to do this.
Ben, can you imagine what's going on inside the walls of Canopy for something like this to happen?
No, I can't really. It's been obviously it's been very harrowing experience from everything. We've talked about it before: cease trade order, class action lawsuits, missing on revenue, stagnant growth, Everything's gone wrong over the past, say, a good year and a half.
Yeah.
Most recently, I would say since November, the share price has lost about 80%. Now they're going to have to work to get this over $1 or do a reverse split, which is never ideal. But it is receiving a bounce today because even though the news was poor, there is no new skeletons in the closet. So as part of the cease trade order, management has to issue periodic updates. I think it's every 1 or 2 weeks. They have to issue updates to the market, and no new skeletons came out of the woodwork now to date. It's just they have to restate BioSteel financials, and they're not going to file their 10K on time, which is a very comprehensive report that every company has to file with the SEC, and that's not usually a good sign. But all this is priced into the stock. A little bit of a reprieve today. Hopefully, from this point to the time that the cease trade order is removed, there's no new skeletons in the closet, and then we'll see what happens from there.
What is can you maybe explain for some of our viewers that are not familiar with, but what is a 10K report and what's involved in it?
Yeah, it's a very comprehensive report, financial report that has to do with everything from the company's financials to the nature of their business to everything in between. It's the most comprehensive report that a company has to file overall with the SEC. So to not file that on time, and because of the BioSteel issue, it shows that they don't have all their they're not in good standing with their filings. But once they resolve BioSteel, I'm sure that they're going to file it a little bit late. And again, all this is priced into the stock. Not much of a surprise.
Yeah. How do you guys see this playing out? And what's the timeline on something like this? Do you have any idea?
It's opaque at best. I mean, the company will resolve it when they can resolve it. I'm sure a company like Canopy has a ton of human capital that's allocated towards this right now. They want to get this resolved sooner rather than later, especially with their standing with the exchange right now being under $1. They don't want this lingering for too long.
Yeah, 100% they don't. Relatively flat I know we touched on it last week that we potentially could say expectations still very low regarding safe. If safe doesn't have any kind of movement here in the summer months, what can we anticipate? I would think all-time lows could be around the corner, could they not, Ben?
I fear so, yeah. And obviously, we've talked about ad nauseum. Investors are looking for federal reform. They're looking for the needle to be moved. They're looking for uh, the progress forward, so to speak. And without that, it's going to be a tough time for these stocks, even though
Yeah.
you could argue that they're very, very cheap right now on an EBITDA basis, on almost everything basis. But the sales quality, their earnings quality is very low right now because of their effective tax rate that goes with 280E. If safe fails, it doesn't mean they still have another shot on goal, investors, with the Becerra descheduling ruling, and that could be something that
Yeah.
could catalyze the market further later this year. I would argue that's more catalyzing actually than safe banking, but safe banking is probably going to be in the cards first. We'll see if it gets that markup vote, and then it gets eventually gets a floor vote when it gets to that committee, and we'll go from there. Right now, I have no indication whatsoever either way whether it's going to pass or not. We've been disappointed so many times, investors have, that I can't say for any sort of certainty whether this is going to be the time. So I'm just sort of waiting to see how it all falls in place. But I hope something happens, or I fear that we could, test the lows on MSOs.
Well, this brings up to our whole point we had a couple weeks ago in our Twitter space. Proceed with caution right now, because I know a lot of people are starting to average down, especially at these prices. But still, it's just, when is low enough, and when is the right time to get in? I would say for investors out there, especially in this space, short term, proceed with caution, right, Anthony?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's we're in just a vacuum right now. I
I
mean,
know.
there's nothing saying yes. There's nothing overwhelmingly saying no. It's a guessing game, and in my short career as from investing and managing my own money, there's nothing worse than uncertainty.
Mhm.
And things tend to trade down during uncertain periods. They don't trade up
Yep.
at all. So I can assure you of that.
Good point.
It's getting a little bit long in the tooth again. We had that 2-3 weeks of euphoria. I can call it. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But yeah, we'll see what's coming down the pipe.
All right.
Things can always go lower too. Like, that's
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah,
like, in the markets, when you think something can't go any lower, it can, and things
it
can
does.
always go lower or higher on the upside more than you expect. So, you could be looking at some of these valuations on some key metrics and look and say, look, this is way too low for this sort of stock, right? Even though growth is sort of petered out in the near term. But things can always go lower, and
Yeah.
Yep.
recession could still happen. The economic environment could degrade a little bit, which could degrade some of the business in some of these companies. So it can go lower. It's clearly a reform trade right now, so I would proceed with caution. Again, I have no indication of what's going to happen either way. I really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's switch to psychedelics. There's some optimism in the air. Big week next week coming up for the psychedelic industry, which is the MAPS Psychedelic Science Conference, considered the biggest conference for the industry, which kicks off next Monday. First thing I wanted to point out was the opening remarks will be provided by Colorado Governor Jared Polis. Am I pronouncing his last name correctly? Is it Polis? Polis. Excuse me.
Polis. You
Polis.
got it right. Yeah.
He's indicating that the psychedelic medicine is more than just a side note for the political class. This is pretty encouraging. So, if you're attending or you can't attend, what are we looking at as far as we're going to be there next week, Anthony? So, if you're heading to this event, what do you think is the biggest thing that people want to see or happen with to be watching and looking for come next week?
I mean, not to be cliche, but I mean, I think they want to see excitement in the space. They want to see progress. They want to see what the maps readouts are going to see. They
Yeah.
want to see like a new spin on the sector. I mean, we came out really hard. We came out really aggressive. We saw a lot of momentum, and then it literally just fell off a fucking cliff.
Yeah.
It got just stopped dead in its tracks. I think it's going to be a good conference. I'm excited to go to Maps. I'm excited to be doing some of the spaces live. from Maps, and I'm excited to catch up with a lot of the brass at a lot of the big companies that are really pushing this forward, and really see what they have to say. I'm looking to hear new stuff though. I mean, I'm not looking to hear the same song and dance and what we've heard for the past year or two. I want to hear progress, and I want to hear just overwhelmingly forward-looking things on the sector, not just stagnation like what we've seen.
Yeah. One can only hope, though, that, as you said, you kind of hinted the idea of Maps having their go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, sorry, there might be a little bit of a lag here, but that's one of my biggest takeaways here is whether MAPS will present that data, the MAPS, the
Yeah.
MDNA assisted therapy data that some have purported is coming fairly shortly. I want to see if they present there, because if you look at the biotech in general, a lot of drug companies, they tend to report new results sometimes at these large conferences. And when you think about it, it makes
Oh
sense
yeah.
because you have a lot of investment bankers there, a lot of analysts that go to these conferences. So you have a lot of so to present this data at a place like that would make sense from the analyst point of view, big name people being there to be able to report on it. So sometimes that tends to happen. I don't have any indication whether it's actually going to happen at this event. It could be another month from now. We don't really know, but if it does, that would be something that would make a splash and turn this from like an ordinary or regular conference with exhibits and so forth to being something noteworthy. It would be a sort of like a punctuation mark on the conference if they have this really good data that they present there. So that is something that I'm looking forward to, and to see
Yeah.
if it actually happens.
Yeah, same. I mean, I have no indication that it's going to be announced there, or that we're going to see it. But I mean, Ben's right. I mean, when you see the J.P. Morgan health conference every year, I mean, there's a lot of showmanship that goes on there. Those CEOs are coming out, and they're not dancing on stage, but I mean, there is showmanship to biotech, and there is a certain level of excitement that you can garner with that. And I would hope that Maps is going to use this property and to its full extent, to be able to release hopefully something that's groundbreaking to the entire industry, and really start to kick that next leg of
Yeah.
excitement that we're going to see for the sector.
One can only hope, for the industry that it's badly needed. They get, I remember a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, when we were in Miami at the Microdose conference, and we were anticipating some good data related to Compass and Cybin, and it kind of fell flat on its face and kind of sucked the air out of the room. But this industry needs it right now. One thing I actually think will be interesting to see is how many therapists will be attending this conference as well, because we all know how many therapists are going to be needed in the next 24 months. But to me, that's another big eye opener too, don't you think, Ben?
Yeah, actually, you took the words right out of my mouth. That was the next thing I was going to mention. I want to see how many therapists are actually going to be there. Is it going to be, overflowing the halls, or and these exhibits overflowing with people, or in, psychotherapists, psychologists who want to learn more information about what's coming from, psychedelic assisted therapy and look to transition into that therapy. So that's what I'm going to see. How
Yeah.
much interest is there? How many psychologists are going there, and how many people want to transition to this type of therapy when it becomes approved?
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a good point, Ben. I mean, one thing, thinking back on the conferences that I've been to, and I mean, I think I might actually get some flack for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I want to see people there that are professionals. I'm not going to be opposed to seeing a bunch of suits walking around, suits, lab coats, trained therapists, actual professionals going to push this forward. I mean, I've been to a couple of these psychedelics conferences. It was a lot of like shamanic people, and people that were definitely grounded in the use of these compounds, which there's nothing wrong with doing that. But I mean, if you're going to appeal to the masses and you want this to be a true therapeutic that's going to eventually be sold into big medicine, like it is a pharmaceutical, and replace SSRIs and replace antidepressants, it's not going to be via that route. If we see private equity, investment bankers, biotech executives, doctors, like Ben said, serious therapists that are there, that's going to be a barometer for me that the needle is moving in the right direction. I think there's a place within the sector for both walks of life, but if we want this to be taken seriously, we want regulations to come, and we want to move this forward, it's definitely going to need to be the latter
Yeah.
that's in attendance.
Well,
Yeah,
one thing I
I
am
would
hearing,
imagine
this
you
is
don't want
the
to see anybody jumping out of a mushroom, right? Like we've seen at some
No,
conferences.
no. I mean, like I was at Microdose in Miami, and there were people handing out LSD and mushrooms in line. to get into the conference. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, do what you want to do. You want to be in this movement and go about it your own way. Sure. We're never going to get to mass adoption or getting MDMA past the FDA the shamanic way. That's not going to happen.
It's a bad image for the
Um,
industry.
yeah, I mean, it's like cannabis. You
Yeah.
go to Washington D.C. and they literally think it's still tie-dye shirts and glass pipes. It's not. Might not be for the better. But if you want it to get to where we want it to go ultimately and still keep the culture instilled in it, you need the serious people to come out of the woodwork and
Yeah.
be partaking in these conversations and at these conferences.
Well, the encouraging thing and the feedback I'm getting, this is the largest practitioner psychedelic conference. Well, I don't know how much that means as far as the industry, but this is a large focus with a lot of practitioners that'll be attending. But we will be there next week, and we'll be having lots of conversations. We'll provide people, obviously, with updates throughout the week as to what we're seeing. And one can only hope that we get some announcements and there's a big step forward pertaining to the industry. But anyway, appreciate you guys checking in. This is a quick trade to black this week, but I'll keep in touch with you guys later this week, and we will go from there.
Definitely. By the way, it's breaking right now that the Warren Davidson, U.S. Congressman, has officially filed legislation to fire Gary Gensler as chairman of the SEC.
Really?
So this is going to get interesting. Yeah.
Oh, that is interesting. All right.
Unbelievable.
Check in tomorrow, folks.
Unbelievable.
We'll have a
what's going
story on
there.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. All right. We'll touch on that tomorrow. Thanks for checking in, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Talk soon.
What's up, everyone? So what'd you think of the interview? Are there any more questions you want us to ask that you want to learn more of? Then leave a comment below and let us know what you think. As usual, share this video with your network, smash that like button, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.